Good morning, everybody. Today I will talk about the Scandinavian style, the modern way to do the spey casting or the fly casting. I will explain how I do it and why I do it, because you have a lot of good benefits if you do it on a modern way compared to the old way. The most powerful part into the rod is in the lower part of the rod, because here the rod is thickest. So if you can use the lower part when you do your casting, you will get much more power and speed in the cast. And all that day we fish on windy days, tight places, things do it difficult for us. It's good to have high line speed, so we get a nice presentation with your fly. And the old way to do it, when you move your upper arm, you have a longer movement with your upper arm. You can't bend the lowest part into the rod, so you don't cast with the strongest part into the rod. My technique is like this. My bottom arm have a longer movement compared to my upper arm. So I stretch out my bottom arm, have this angle on the upper arm, and go into my stomach and stop there. This movement will bend the rod between my arms. And then I start to make a lot of power into the cast. How I do it, when I lift the line out of the water and start move the rod to the anchoring point, I go out with my bottom arm. When I go back to the anchoring point, and when the leader hit the water, I have this position. And back again to the front cast. I move also here the bottom arm first. And when my stop position is here into the front cast, I have the rod very high up. That's why I stop quick and stop early into the front cast, and that gives me small loops, tight loops, and a lot of power. If I move the rod too close to the water, I open the loops. I don't get so much power into the cast. But if you normally use your upper arm, you have a muscle memory, so it can be difficult to change the movement. Then I have a tricks. This shooting strap is good for helping me to change that muscle memory. Now I can't move my upper arm. The strap is stopping my arm there. So if you're doing like this at home, in front of the mirror, before you go fishing, this is a good way to do it. If you do this, your brain will start to change the muscle memory, so you can start to move the bottom arm. If your movement is there, you use the upper arm in your technique, so you have 100% movement and power from this arm. It will help you if you can get only 10% from the bottom arm. Already in that position, you will start to make more power into the cast. My style is 80-20. The length of the movement and the power I give into the rod, 80% from my bottom arm and 20% from the upper arm. But you will get benefit if you do it 90-10, 80-20. If you start to get the bottom part of the rod in your style. What's happened then? I bend the whole rod and I bend the lowest part into the rod. So the whole rod will be much more powerful for doing this cast. And tight places, deep wading, all these terrible windy days, and tight places with trees close to your bank and different things, this is a better way to do it, I think. Like this. Then I will show some casting. Maybe I go up here so we can see the movements. I use this technique in all the different techniques, both the snake roll, the spey cast, everything. So if I first show you the movement with a double spey, you know that technique, double spey cast. I go up, came there, go back again, and here I start to push my bottom arm out. So I have this position when I have this anchoring point. If I use left hand spey, the same, like this, out there. And I go into my stomach like this. Snake roll, the same, out there, stop there. So I do the same in every technique. So I go up, move my left bottom arm out, like this, and back again. And the line speed. If you fish on windy days, downstream wind, you don't load your rod so effective. The line will go down with the wind. So you want to cast there, but the line is landed down there. So the fishing will not be so effective. But with this one, slowly movement there, like this, and out. Now the line will fight the wind, so I hit the point I need, depend how much wind it is. So I start to use slowly movement there, and the kick came there. You see tight loop, high speed. Many people, when they start to practicing this, they think, okay, now I have to use a lot of power, so like this and this and this. But that, it's not the best way to do it. Take control over your line, slowly movements, get the line in the right position, and there you have the kick in the last part of the cast. Lift the line up. When you start to go against the anchoring point, you move your bottom arm out like this. Try to do it in one line from your stomach. Don't go too high up like this. Then you see the rod tip go down to the water, and your anchoring point will be so good. I came up here, go right out like this. My rod tip will go in one level, and the anchoring point will be better. Double spay, the same out there and like this. Okay. Thank you. Then Tellis, take over.
Yeah, all right. I was just, as you can see, the setup of line that John Erik is using with the shooting head, the Scandinavian way of fishing, has its benefits because it's pretty easy to quickly adapt if you're fishing. For example, in spring when we're high water, you want to change to a more heavy sinking line, or if it's all of a sudden the water drops, you want to get up higher. It has the benefit of easily you just change the head or the tip. I use that, I would say, 60-70% of the time, because especially in Norway and in Sweden, our rivers goes when we're fishing in the north of Sweden, for example, in late May, early June, we're literally fishing white, rapid water up in the north. So anything floating and you're off the game. Nothing is floating except for my running line when I'm fishing in those rivers. But as soon as the water drops, the floating line comes out. So we're just gonna show you quickly a little bit here. This is a integrated line, which is a weight forward for double hand, a Scandi integrated. I use this a lot, especially in these kind of rivers, and the summer comes. It's when most of the time we are good with a floating line, and that's it. You want to adjust it a little bit with a poly leader, which I've done here, for example. But as the river was just a few days ago, this would have not been my setup. I would have used what John Erik is using, a shooting head with multiple densities. But just quickly, and then I'm going to give you some casting pointers as well. The benefit of these types of lines is that we don't have that loop-to-loop connection. I don't have anything that gets stuck in the guides. So like low water fishing, when I am retrieving a lot, it has a lot of benefits in not getting stuck. And as you can see, I can also shoot from a point where I still have a lot of line inside the rod tip. So it is a huge benefit with those kind of integrated lines, which in Scandinavia, most people are like, they look at it with a big question mark, while you guys, you love these kind of lines. I use this a lot, especially in summer fishing, because I have that possibility of adjusting where I'm lifting and shooting the line. I can use it with an overhang, or I can even pull it in. And as you can see, most of these lines, they can easily handle a poly leader. I have a 10-foot Sync 5 poly leader on this, but it still manages beautifully. So it has a lot of benefits. So make sure to give it a try later if you're interested in seeing the new integrated line that we have. I'll often get questions, as for those of you who don't know me, maybe I have a history in spey casting tournaments. Won the World Championship once. So I frequently get asked, how do I cast further? How can I improve my distance? And there are, of course, things there, and there's a lot of myths. There's a lot of saying that you should not use power. Well, it depends on how far you want to cast. What line speed, as John Erik was talking about, what line speed you want to create. The further you want to go, the more power you need to apply. It's just laws of physics. But before I apply more power, I need to make sure that that cast is clean. So when I learn how to cast nice and clean, distance will follow quite easily. As soon as I'm clean in my casting, I can also start applying the power. So just a few pointers on how am I supposed to be cleaning my casting up, regardless of style, because there is different styles, as John Erik is talking about. If you are top-handed dominated caster, yes, try to get a little bit movement of this hand. It will be beneficial, it will help you. But it might be difficult to stop doing this if you have done this for 30 years. That cast will still fly out with a little bit more muscle or body movement, but the fundamentals of the casts, regardless of style, are the same. What needs to be there, not how it's supposed to be there. So for example, keeping tension in your line is key. You know the feeling when you have, I don't feel the load, or I don't feel it. That's some sort of slack, which is my worst enemy. When I'm gonna throw a line, if I introduce slack, that's slack, not much will happen. But as soon as I have tension in that line, I can move it. So that's key to getting there. And this is regardless of single hand, double hand, spay, overhead, snake, snap, snappy snap, it doesn't matter. Tension matters. And for example, starting a spay cast or a fly cast, if I am, and John Erik was into that as well, slow and steady movements. If I am inconsistent or snappy and twisty, I will have issues with moving that line smoothly. So by starting with your rod tip pretty low and you're lifting that line, it is pretty easy to actually move it if I have tension in it. But if I lose tension by, for example, snapping, and then all of a sudden all these kind of unevenness in the line will create issue. So as soon as this is starting to get cleaned out, that line has quite a lot of speed without even applying power to it. But of course, if I apply power to it, it will get more and more speed, more and more power. But the definition of power when it comes to casting a fly line is not the same as breaking down a brick wall. Not really. So it still needs to be clean and smooth, but this is one of the biggest, most important key points, is how you start, and to be able to create consistency in your casting is, if I'm always trying to do the same thing, I will most likely get more consistent. But if I'm taking my steps down here and all of a sudden I'm starting my sweep here, it creates a big issue. First of all, I have slack in the line. So, oh yeah, I need to dip the rod down again. Well, it's a lot of slack. So what I've done here, it's like, oh man, am I screwed? No, but you might need to make a roll cast first to stretch that out. Lower the rod. Okay, now I'm back in the game. I have tension, I can lift that line out and start to move that backwards. So that is key, and it's the same with an overhead cast. If I lift here, I still have tension due to the current, but this is by definition not really tension. This is slack. That's tension. See the difference between the line? It's hanging down on a dangle. This will work, but this means that if I'm going to start moving that line backwards, I cannot apply anything incorrect. But as soon as that's straight, that's tension. So to create that, regardless of style, if I'm top-handing it, it's the same key element that needs to be identical. Even if I'm doing this style, same thing, starting to lift that line smoothly out of the water. And another thing that is very, very important when it comes to getting more efficiency and getting more distance in your cast is aligning the weight of the line. If I'm going to cast the line in that direction, the D-loop or the overhead cast needs to be in the opposite direction. So the back cast and the forward cast is, in a way, it's a mirror image of what I'm trying to create in that direction. So for example, does anyone recognize this? I think, because I still struggle with this sometimes, and then it wants to hit me. What direction does that D loop have? What direction has that line? Okay, well, it's not in that direction. That D loop was still pointing downstream in the mirror image. This wants to go there. Even though I'm looking at the anchor, well, the anchor is in a good position. Why does this keep happening? Because the mass of the line is not in the right place. So aligning that, so if I want to go there, I need to move that line so it is in the opposite direction. Mirror. So if I will go trout fishing, and I have a trout just in this almost like edge of the stream, if I'm gonna aim at that rising trout, let's simulate that this is a 9'5", not a 15-footer. But if I'm gonna cast in that direction, that back cast needs to be in that direction to be able to create a path in between. I'm going straight forward, I'm going straight backwards. So it's thinking about where the line is and where am I going with it. And that gets easier when you're consistent in your lift. The key element of the cast to get that smooth, slowly lift that out. Okay, I'm gonna move it here, I think. Okay, well, now I created slack. Well, as soon as that happened, I can re-tension it if I would like to do so. Tension in the line, you will be able to move it. As John Erik said about Scandi style, I have like some sort of mixed style. I've tried all kinds of things over the years. But I am, even though it visibly I'm not as short in the stroke or distinctive as John Erik, I still use 80% of power with this hand. I have a more open kind of casting, but I'm still putting majority of my power with this hand to get speed into it. Because if I'm pushing, I will get tired. I can push straight forward and it will work, but I'm losing the efficiency of getting that rod tip to rotate over faster. So, key points to think when you're going out casting next time, going out fishing next time. When you're retrieving the line, for example, this is a pretty natural angle of it. And you're walking. But then you find yourself, well, okay, I lost the momentum of starting at the water, but I cannot lower it afterwards because then I will either get slack or the fly will sink and get stuck. So here, small tip, when you're walking and then you see, okay, I'm getting close now, lower it and pull in the last few down here. Because now I have tension in it, I can move it, and I don't have to do a lot of those false casting, rolling it up and redirecting it. So being a little bit thoughtful through the process, and it takes a few times, but then it's just there. For me personally, the only thing I think about when I'm casting and fishing through this pool, well, mainly, where is the salmon? Where am I supposed to put the fly? The second thing is, it's just this. I'm walking, retrieving my line. Okay, I'm getting close to what I'm supposed to do. Lower, okay, and then I'm focusing on lifting that line out of the water. The rest follows. It gets easier to get consistent if you start in the same way every time. All right, the Con and the guys will teach you how to fish now when I've taught you how to cast. Any questions, we'll take that afterwards, and feel free to test out the gear as well.
I'm going to do a few questions, I just wander around, tell us if that's okay, and see if anybody's got any questions now. I'll come up with the mic.
Yeah, sure.
And we can fire away if that's all right. Yeah. So listen, guys, anybody's got any questions that they'd like to ask Tellis and Jan Erik, then pop your hands up. Don't worry about... Oh, I've got one. All right, hang on. I'm coming across. Okay.
It's just really the load point with that line. What is the load point with that line?
Low point?
The load.
Load, well, I mean, I would say the sweet spot is, well, that's just my words, but yeah, the load spot or sweet spot, I would say in just the color transition somewhere here, because now you have a little bit of that back taper. You can pull it in and still shoot because you will have the target weight is still out, but due to this back taper, you have quite a big adjustable sweet spot. So you can just, I can show you from here, for example, this will still shoot well, even with some of the back taper inside the rod tip. But if you want to have a meter extra of line when you're swinging around, that's also benefit of those integrated lines, that it's a little bit adjustable as well. I use this with a little bit of overhang because it suits me personally a little bit. Oh, a little bit too much speed in that one. At this point, it's 12.5 meters. So with the short back taper, it's 12.5. Then you have a tapered handling line, and then the shooting line comes in thinner as well.
Yeah, 12.5 meters, that's what, about 45, is it, 40, 46 feet? In old money, money.
I think, yeah, somewhere in that ballpark, right? Everything above 18 feet I cannot calculate.
Yeah.
Any other questions, anybody?
Yeah, I've got one. Normally when I fish, if I'm fishing left hand up, I always put my left foot forward and face the target, and vice versa. If I'm fishing right hand up, right foot forward and face the target. I think that's a key component of getting it right, particularly getting the D loop, as you say, mirrored in the right direction.
Yeah. I agree, and just as I mean, there's personalities and style. There's some great tournament baitcast who has what we call open stance. For me, I try that as well. Sometimes when I'm fishing, there's a rock in the way, so I cannot put my foot where I want. But if I can choose, I put the same. Top hand, front leg, or vice versa. And that, for me, that helps, because if I'm focusing on that lift, the next thing and my arms are already, they're ready. So what I need to do is rotate my body. And that will naturally put it more where I want it, as long as I'm not waving my arms around. So different styles. I lock my arms and make most of the cast with the body. Except for the forward stroke, that I'm of course using the arms, but to move the line. But that helps. For me, it helps as well.
Well,
if I want that,
I also think that if you right hand up, right foot forward, what it helps you to do, it helps you to, it helps you, whereas if you got your open stance you were talking about, it's not as easy to do that.
No, I think open stance, everything has its trade-off or its pros and cons. So if I'm opening my stance, I get very mobile, which is good. But now how in the F am I going to cast forward? Because I rotated so much. That's the trade-off. That's the risk with the open stance. It's easier to move it back here, but it's also a risk that I'm going to slice the forward cast because my body wants to fall back. So if you can keep track of that, it has its pros that you can just hammer it here. But for me, open stance, I don't get as straight over my shoulder in the forward.
Good question. Yeah. Good question. Anybody else?
What size poly leaders?
Sorry, one second.
What size poly leaders can them integrated lines run them?
What size of poly leaders?
For this one, 1011 that I have on here, I have a 10-foot extra super fast that weighs about 4 grams.
You reduce your leader length then or not? Or?
Yeah, the same with a sinking line fishing. The deeper I want it to fish, the shorter the tippet. Sometimes when I'm fishing like full 800 grain lines in those white rapids, it's just fly line, tippet, fly. Because I just wanted to, it should land on the fish, or because you will always get, I mean, you can use a long leader if the swing is nice and long. I mean, sooner or later that will be level, it will fish in the same depth. But if I have a 15-foot tapered leader, fly, and then a sinking line, it will take a while before that actually happens. So the more sink, the shorter the leader.
Anybody else, ladies and gentlemen?
My right hand My right arm is my dominant arm. Yet I can seem to cast better when my left hand is my top arm. Why is that?
Because your dominant hand is down here.
Right.
Good question.
So that's good. If no one didn't, someone didn't hear that, that's a good thing. I am right-hand sided. Today it doesn't really matter, but it took a while for me to control this one. This was all over the place. But as soon as I started doing that, I can create better line speed on my left shoulder side because my dominant hand is on the lower part of the rod. So for anyone who's like extremely right side dominated, go out and practice. As soon as this one gets somewhat controlled, you will feel that, oh, this is actually going places because you have your dominant hand rotating and pulling the rod.
Excellent. Okay. Lovely, guys. Thank you very much, Tellis.
Thank you, everyone.